Hey everyone, welcome to a virtual paint along, sip and paint, whatever you'd like to call it. So today we're going to be working on our desert landscape scene. This is going to be a little bit more of an advanced painting or kind of paint along. I will go over supplies and then particularly how I have set up my paint palette. So supplies you're going to need today, you're going to need some type of surface to paint on. Notice I'm using a piece of paper. I have it taped down. That's for a few reasons. Remember that paper, when it gets wet, it likes to curl up, wrap, and kind of bubble. So this helps keep it flat, and you'll keep it flat until the paint's dry, and then remove it. I do want to point out, notice I don't have this edge taped, because I do like to show you that I use painter's tape. I always put it on my clothes first to get those little fuzzy bits, and then I tape it down. Not only does it help keep the painting flat while it dries, it also helps to keep your work area clean because we'll go over the edges. It won't get your table dirty that way. And again, don't remove the tape until it's completely dry, the paint. Okay, so you also need a water cup. I'm using a mug, and that's old. If you're using acrylic paint, please make sure you're using something that you are okay ruining and not using for food anymore. You will also need some type of surface to dry off your some type of surface to dry off your paintbrushes, and I will be using the 3 paintbrushes I typically use, which are a large flat paintbrush, a medium round, and a small. Okay, so because we're doing that desert landscape, there's a lot of color mixing involved. So what I've done is notice how the paper plate, all of the paints are around the edges. I'm going to zoom in here for a second so you guys can really see what paints I'm working with here. Okay, so how this is working, I have a solid white paint. Mostly white with a little bit of yellow. Solid yellow. This is going to be most of our sky. Over here, I have a little bit of, I'm going to be creating orange, so yellow and red. I like to have more yellow than red. Pure red by itself. For the middle ground, we're making purple, so mostly red, a little bit of blue, and a touch of white. I'm going to be mixing in some white by itself, so I want this pile. And then the foreground is going to be mainly blue with a little bit of white, so that's why I have the blue just right here. Okay, so I am not going to mix the colors until I get to them. Because there's no reason to waste getting all that paint in the brush and not actually using it. So to start out today, I'm going to be starting with the white and yellow, and then the yellow itself. So zooming back out, adjusting to make sure you guys can see what I'm doing, and I apologize. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to start out by mixing my white and my yellow. So I want kind of a pale buttery color. If you want to add a little bit of water to your paintbrush before you begin, you are welcome to, but I've done another painting today. So I'm going to kind of draw a line about halfway, just right above halfway, and this is going to become my horizon line. And I don't want it to be straight because there's going to be a mountain that's purple underneath. So that's just kind of my horizon line. Okay, so taking this pale buttery yellow, I'm going to paint in this section itself about the first third with this pale buttery color. And I'm just going to go all the way across. I'm picking up the paint. Okay, so about that top third is that pale buttery color. I'm also going to bring some of it down onto the edges a little bit until I meet back to that horizon line. Just like that. So now I'm going to go into some of my pure yellow, and I'm going to put it just inside this edge. So again, I'm picking up some of that pure yellow and just inside that edge. I can blend it up by mixing it up into that wet, buttery yellow and mix it back in. And again, I'm going to bring it across my horizon line. And this area is going to kind of become where our sun goes. And we'll add that sun in later on. Okay, So now I've done my pure yellow, my buttery yellow, and now I'm going to incorporate some of the orange. So I'm not even going to wash my paintbrush between this because I already had pure yellow on here. Personally, I'm looking at this and seeing I made it very strong with my red. Red can be a very overpowering color. So I'm going to pick up some of that plain yellow using that mixture and trying to dilute my orangey color. Okay, so with this one, I'm going to be loose with it. So this is where I'm going to start to get those brush strokes. If you want to switch to the more rounded color, or the more rounded paintbrush, you totally can. There's also going to be some cacti. So it's going to be one here and another one here. So I'm just kind of painting some curves about where they're going to go. So with this painting, what makes it kind of unique is the fact that it really has a lot of brush strokes. It's very loose. So don't feel like, there's going to be another one over here. Don't feel like it has to be perfect. And be okay with your brush strokes showing. I'm going to kind of bring some of that orange color out and up a little bit. And I'm just kind of doing like a semicircle as I'm painting this. Okay, so pretty pleased with that. Maybe I want to add some more orange along the ground. And again, I'll be painting over a large area of this with my cacti, so it's okay to kind of paint in. Okay, so again, very rough, loose painting. So since I already have a lot of white here, or a lot of red right there, I'm just going to scoop up some of my plain white and mix it in here and get a nice pink color. So again, I'm just scooping up some of my plain white. And I'm going to start bringing that around as well. I think I'm actually going to change paintbrushes. So I'm going to add a little bit of water to this one. Dab it off just a little bit. And then go into my light pink that I've created. I want to add a little bit more red to it, and apparently I added too much. So I'm just color mixing to get the color I want. And painting this around. Again, it's a loose painting, so don't expect it to be perfect. It's okay. Bring it up into the sky. Again, we're just doing kind of like half moons, semicircles, blending it up into there. All right, so that pretty much makes most of our sky. I'm going to go back into that buttery yellow, and that's going to become, and I'm just painting in a semicircle, and that'll become kind of our setting sun. That. And I'm going to pull some of my yellow again and kind of put that on top. And don't be afraid to go back into your original colors. So see how I'm just pulling some yellow, putting some yellow on top of this. That's the fun part about such a loose painting, is you get to have a lot of fun with it and experiment. And if you don't like it, you paint it over, you paint it again. Not a big deal. Okay, so by keeping kind of these semicircles along the painting, kind of mimicking that, what you'll see with the cacti itself, you're keeping it consistent and you're making it have visual sense. Alright, so pretty loose painting. I'm going to tone down that. Maybe I'll add a touch of pure white in here, right there. And I personally am going to add a little bit of pure white mixed in the top. So I'm going to wash out, switch back over to my rectangular paintbrush, dry it off on the side, and go to my pure white and bring that in along the top. And again, I'm going to blend it, but I'm blending it by making those semicircles and those curves. And I can kind of smooth out some of those lines if I want to with that as well. Okay, so I am happy with that background. So now I'm going to be going into my purple middle ground. So here we are, we're using the red, blue, and white, and we're going to mix that together. So making purple, even though it is technically red and blue that make purple, red and blue by itself make a very, very, very dark purple. So just be aware of that. So see how this almost looks black? So that's why I'm over here. I have this whole white pile that I'm just going to blend into it, or mix into it. So I'm pulling it. Again, see how much looser this paint palette is and how many more colors we have. So it just shows you how loose this painting is by itself. And I'm kind of, what I'm doing right here is I'm making various degrees of the color. So I have the lightest one on the edge, I have a medium one that I've mixed in, and then the darkest one in the back. Alright, so taking, and I have the medium one on the paintbrush right now, I'm going to go right up to that line. Right up to that line that we created, letting the paintbrush do the work, bringing it across. There we go. Maybe I want to have taller edge up there, and mountains are wiggly, so I like that. So with the remaining portion of the paper, I'm going to do about what would be a third of the remaining paper and create this ground line. And again, since we're creating a foreground, which is forward, middle ground, and background of this painting to really help create that illusion of depth, or the illusion that the painting is three-dimensional, we really need to make sure we're doing from the back of the picture forward to really illustrate that. So now I'm going to switch back to my round paintbrush, washing it out because I never washed it out last time, dry it off, pat it off, and we're ready to go. So I'm going to be mixing between, and again, this is a very loose painting, so I'm going to be mixing in some of the darker paint to just show some variation in the mountain itself. It doesn't have to be perfect, but do try to do it in little humps, little mountain-like or hill-like formations as you're putting this in. Again, even though you're being loose with it, you want it to make visual sense. When I say visual sense, I mean like you literally want it to make sense that it's lighter there, or that the shape actually makes sense. So I'm mixing some white, because again, it's kind of become the lightest purple is over there. And I'm bringing that lightest part along the edge that's closest to the setting sun, because again, that makes sense visually, because that becomes the highlight. In some parts of it, I'm going over a darker section that I had made, and that's just fine. And maybe I want to make this pretty white down here, right underneath where the sun would be hitting the most. There we go. And because this paint is wet, one of the things you're going to have to really be aware of is the tip of your paintbrush. If you see, the tip of my paintbrush is still white, so that means the color I'm still applying is white. If it turns into dark purple, then I'm no longer applying white, I'm applying dark purple because I've picked that purple up along the way as I'm painting. So just kind of be aware of what color you're actually using versus what color you picked up. So they do change from time to time. Ooh, I just had a cat join us. So wash out your paintbrush, and then we're going to be switching to the blue. I'm going to move the cat. And make sure your paintbrushes are washed. And the remaining section is going to be blue. So there are some greens that can get mixed into this, but the fun thing is you already have blue and you already have yellow. Well, when you mix blue and yellow together, you get green. So I'm going to take, before I go into my blue, I'm going to scoop up some of this pure yellow, because we're done with it for right now. I'm going to put it next to my blue so that I can pick it up when I'm ready. And let me just wipe off this yellow. I'm going to go straight into that blue. Okay, so going right underneath that purple, making sure you overlap it slightly. Again, let the paintbrush do the work. So the paintbrush is flat and you're going across a flat edge. So let the paintbrush do what it's supposed to do, which means it has a flat edge already. So use the flat edge. Now I'm going to paint this in. My particular blue that I'm using is relatively thin. It's kind of watery. So it's really good that I'm going to be mixing in another color, so it'll help thicken it and have it, again, make visual sense in my picture. All right, so now I'm going to start. I'm going to wash out my paintbrush. I'm going to, again, switch back to my round paintbrush, and I'm going to just put some straight yellow in here and start to mix that in. So that straight yellow will turn green. So that's what I want. And again, in the last section, I was talking about how you need to make sure what color is actually on the tip of your paintbrush. Right now, the tip of my paintbrush is no longer yellow. I'm not using yellow, I'm using green now. So even though I started with yellow, the paint has mixed and I'm no longer using the color I started with. I've created a new color. So what I'm doing here is I'm kind of just doing light hills. I'm doing kind of a curved, hilly shape. So just a soft roundness. Bringing that in. If I want to add some regular, just straight blue back into it, I can mix that. And if I want to just get some more purple, if I want to have some just strong streaks of yellow, I can also bring those in. Treat those yellows like they're highlights. So again, it make visual sense. They're closer to where the sun is in the picture itself. So that means towards the middle of your picture. So, or at least for mine, my sun wound up being towards the middle of it. So I want to make sure that those highlights, and I can blend that down. So mixing those two colors together. I think I'm going to add a little bit more dark blue. Again, have fun. It's a very loose painting. So there we go. Maybe just a touch more yellow. And I actually am thinking about using some of this buttery yellow color that we used for the sky, just to kind of reflect back into it. So a little bit of that, and I'll just kind of bring it along the edges, because again, this paint is very, very wet, so I'm picking up a lot of that color as I go, and kind of along the edge right here. There we go. And notice I'm just wiping off my paintbrush because I'm just trying to get the green that I'm picking up as I paint this off. A little bit back here, right at that edge. And by doing this, I'm adding consistency and unity throughout my picture by repeating those colors. So there, and maybe a little bit down here. All right. So I'm pretty pleased with that. Personally, I might go back and add some more color into the sky if I wanted to, but I think I'm actually pretty pleased, pretty happy. Okay, so at this point, we have not added any cacti or any trees or anything like that. That's okay. We are gonna let this dry for a little bit. Do not take the tape off, and then we're gonna come back and do our cacti on top of that.